Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast, where grit meets growth. With your host, Nick Espanet, bringing you stories of resilience, reinvention, and the real climb to success.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Today we have Derrick Johns join us from Austin, Texas. He is a CEO for Diffusion Technologies, and I'll let him expand a little more on what they do, but it's medical implants. And so it looks like I've looked on his LinkedIn, looks like some exciting stuff. So Derrick, if you can just kind of fill us in on what you're doing and quick snapshot of what's going on in your business, I'd love to hear more.
Sure. Diffusion Technologies is a medical biomaterials company, and we make currently spinal implants. And the genesis for the company kind of came about 15 years in me in marketing and product development in the spinal industry, and sitting around development meetings with engineers and saying, why do we only have titanium, stainless steel, and another polymer that's called PEEK, polyether ether ketone. And they all kind of laughed at me at the time. I was at Abbott Spine here in Austin. And they said, well, why don't you go pitch a new biomaterial to management that's at least 10 years of development. It's akin to getting a new drug through. And you have no ideas, no patents, no nothing, and see how long you keep your job. So Abbott actually sold off the spine division in 2009. I was young and foolish enough to think it was going to be easy, Nick. But here we are, almost 18 years later, and we've got probably the holy grail of biomaterials for not only spine, but there's applications far and wide across foot and ankle, sports medicine. We have an application for breast implants now that a big problem with breast implants is when you put them in, the immune system sees that silicone as a foreign body.
Rejects them.
And it kind of walls it off from the rest of the body by putting a fibrous tissue around it. And the same is true of titanium and all the materials that we use in orthopedics. You probably know someone that is our age and says, oh, I got a titanium plate here or there.
Sure. Well, I was a physical therapist in a prior life, so did a lot of hip and knee replacement and back surgeries.
Yep. So that technology really hasn't changed in 50 years.
Wow.
It's been titanium and stainless steel, and the reason for that is kind of what I referenced earlier, in that the bigger orthopedic companies aren't equipped and unwilling to kind of go down that research avenue. And I shouldn't say this, but we didn't design for this, but what we found through our R&D process is Z-Fuse, which is our biomaterial. When it's implanted, the patient's immune system doesn't see it as a foreign body.
Oh, wow.
The healing that avoids a chronic inflammatory response. I didn't know you were a physical therapist, so this makes it quite easy.
Yes.
And that starts the early healing cascade. And we did, when we got FDA approval in January of 2020, right when COVID was gripping us all, we decided to not expand it, on a huge commercialization effort, but to really kind of narrow it and get post-market data on actual surgeries. And we asked the surgeon at Indiana Spine, Dr. Paul Kramer, to literally take the first 75 patients that came in the door for a transforaminal interbody fusion, which is a TLIF. So we excluded no patients. We didn't cherry pick. We had smokers, diabetics, revision surgeries, patients on steroids. And we CT'd them at a window of 6 to 8 months. And to put some context around that, most studies that are post-market like that do CTs at 12 months.
Longer time.
Right. And if you look at the comparative data searches on that, you get about a 65 to 68%, which is the mean fusion rate at 12 months in the lumbar spine. We did that at 6 to 8 months, and because we didn't get that chronic inflammatory process and the healing started much quicker, we had a 93.4% fusion rate at 6 to 8 months, and we
Wow.
validated that through a third-party medical metrics down in Houston, which is pretty much the gold standard for radiographic analysis.
Okay.
I think about 85% of these types of fusions for go to FDA are done by medical metrics, and the bar that they set for fusion was very high. We had to have uh, uh, bone going through the implant, bridging bone through the implant, and we had to have integration on both of the end plates on the inferior
Okay.
and superior end plate. So it wasn't an easy protocol, and we really turned some heads within the industry with that data.
Sound like you set really high standards. So something you said early on in your intro that it was a lot more challenging than you anticipated, but I think that's what sets people we want to have on the Flex Forward podcast. What because things that are easy, a lot of people would do it, and they wouldn't have you wouldn't have the success. You wouldn't. Well, part of it is you want to be rewarded for your work for with income, but it's
Right.
something. So there's a lot of competition probably in this area and different things, and even to get approved. What sets you apart to be able to overcome that challenge, that hurdle of it being hard, or what maybe something that comes easy for you that others might find challenging?
Well, I'm a former Marine, so when I
Thank you for your service.
appreciate that.
I saw your hat back there, so
And
your
it,
lid.
and it's really necessity. It was really necessity, Nick. We started the company in 2009, which was right in the middle of the financial meltdown.
Sure.
So, looking back, we didn't have the ability then, or, no venture capital firms were funding anybody at that time. So we had to go out. I raised our seed round from surgeon friends of mine and distributors. And we still haven't done a VC round. We raised $20 million in that manner,
Oh wow.
time span, and we've stayed away from venture capital. Now, I sold a car to make payroll once. My house was in foreclosure twice, I believe, and we just kept, as I said earlier, it was necessity. I had put myself out on the limb with a lot of professionals, some orthopedic distributors and surgeon friends of mine, and they're really we've changed course a lot of times. We started with an antimicrobial polymer, and the FDA came back and we went to the FDA at first, and they said, "Oh, that's a class 2 device. It's a 510(k) pathway. Just show us how the antimicrobial affects fusion." So we went and got a CE mark, and we had a world-class neurosurgeon in Germany ready to do a fusion equivalency study, and we sent the surgical protocol to FDA, and they came back with 87 pages of questions from their dual
Wow.
device test that they changed course on. So what they were asking for was essentially the largest clinical trial in the history of Western medicine for a medical device to get a p-value around infection prevention. So we kind of scratched our heads. We had,
Sounds expensive.
yeah, it's impossible. No,
Yeah.
we couldn't do it, and no large orthopedic company would go down that road. So we kind of scratched our heads, and we remembered what a friend of mine and one of our original investors told us when we described the antimicrobial technology and what we were doing. He said, "Well, who cares about the antimicrobial?" He says, "What you're talking about sounds to me like it's an osteoconductive polymer, the way that the surface chemistry is on that material." So we stripped out the antimicrobial agent in that, and we went to Da Vinci Labs up in Boston, spent our last $250,000 on a rabbit study, and we put a dog bone implant into the femoral canal of the rabbit, and it was a dumbbell, so let's say, and
Okay.
we wanted the bone to jump over that critical defect and stick to the minor diameter. And I remember the vet saying the night before we did a call for implantation, he goes, "Why are you using a dog bone? Why not you just use a bone dowel for this?" And we said, "Well, the Hail Mary Grand Slam is if the bone jumps over that." And the vet laughed at us and said, "Well, what makes you think that's going to happen?" And we said, "Blind faith." And that's exactly what happened.
Awesome.
Astonished when we got those images, and we went out to again our investor network with those images, and we literally raised $3.5 million in 2 hours.
Nice.
with foot and ankle surgeons, one of whom wrote an $800,000 check on seeing that image. So it's when you ask what kind of tenacity we use, we always bet big and hoped for the best, but we were small, and I've run the company kind of like a Marine Corps squad, very small, very tight, able to turn directions much faster than larger corporations,
So important.
and I think it served us well to date. So.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, part of our title is resilience. It sounds like you guys had resilience. Having to fight through that downturn where you're putting your car on the line, your house on the line. I'm sure that isn't easy in your home. If you're married, you're bringing a lot of stress. I mean, we've been close, not quite to that point, but it's having the resilience to get through that time period where some other people may say, "I throw their hands up and I'm done." So I commend you for that. That's awesome.
Appreciate
So
that.
if someone's listening and wants to get better at some of this, at resilience or something like, just sticking with something, do you have any books or podcasts, any things that you do or tips you can provide that may help them?
You have to believe in yourself, Nick. And without that self-belief to initially, jump off the island and start your own company, that's the first one. But you have to be prepared to have that same grit 20 or 30 times throughout the process. And
Sure.
when the times look tough and the obstacles look too big, it's all about self-fortitude and believing in your product and yourself to get it done. So I'm not a big self-help reader. I don't have that kind of time. But one of the books I will actually say there's a book by Nick Green, The 33 Strategies of War. Um, we've had, hostile takeover attempts by outside investors. That's another whole story. And we've survived that. And that book, when I'm on a plane, I have it on Audible. I think I've listened to it 15 times. And every
Oh,
time
wow.
I listen to it, I find another gem that's applicable to a particular situation that we're in.
That's awesome. I took a note. I'm going to put that on my wish list on Amazon. Awesome. So, and you may have just mentioned, but what is one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in your career?
Um, Being small, I think, as a smaller company, the way that contracting happens now for hospitals, um, it's very, very difficult. A lot, and I question the legality of it. I mean, if you're, a Johnson and Johnson, they go into these hospitals and they do a deal where they say, oh, if 90% of the implants implanted are Johnson and Johnson in orthopedics, then you get, a 7% rebate, which is a kickback to the hospital. And
Sure.
overcoming that in hospital contracting has been difficult. But because of the data we have, and because we are really the first homogeneous new biomaterial in orthopedics in the last 25 years, we've been able to overcome that. And it's actually, we're getting premium pricing for that too. So I think
That
that's
that's awesome. I would imagine that you get your doctor, your surgeons that like your material, see the better outcomes, and they're the ones that kind of can put their foot down and say, we want this product's better for our patient, even if the hospital is getting that 7%.
not anymore. In some cases, yes. It used to be that way across the board, but not anymore because and what the hospital will push back on and say, well, it's all commoditized. There's no real differential in that, and that's where
Wow.
it's defused because it's a new biomaterial, which is kind of akin to getting a new drug through FDA. It took us, you have to an FDA master file with um, almost 100 different biocompatibility tests, which was
Wow.
onerous for us. And, you don't know, you complete number 23 and you don't know if number 24 is going to be the one that disqualifies your product. So that was a process in and of itself as
I
well.
bet so. And that's one of the things that started pushing me out of the PT world is I felt like the accountants were making decisions, clinicians were not making decisions. Is more where the dollars fall, and so that became extremely frustrating. Documentation. Um, they're like, oh, you didn't say this. You need to word this a different way so we can get paid. I'm like, I still did the
Exactly.
same treatment. So it was really frustrating, especially getting out at a time when everything was on paper, and then we moved to the digital world where stuff could be micromanaged. So yeah, that it was one of the frustrations that got me looking at alternative income sources and got me into what I'm doing now in the commercial real estate world.
Yeah.
And so sounds like things are going well for your business, and moving in the right directions. As you look toward the future, do you guys look at other passive income sources or opportunities that, may eventually supplement what you're doing? Or I don't think it needs to be replaced. You've got it sounds like a great product. So what are your thoughts as people consider passive options to invest and then have passive income coming back?
Well, we just made some changes to our board of directors. We brought in a gentleman named Terry Rich, who used to be the CEO of Alpha Tech Spine, which is a fairly big spine company now. We're talking to another mid-size industry player on a license for spine, which is going to allow us to start developing other materials like the silicone breast implant and sports medicine and actually hip and knee as well. We have some applications there. So
Awesome.
we're going to broaden out and license spine, get that income coming in and really start going down the R&D trail on other applications.
Wow, something like you have a lot of stuff going. So as we're wrapping up you may have just you're answering my questions as we get kind of through them. So as we're wrapping, what are any exciting plans or initiatives you guys have in the next 6 to 12 months?
As I said, the breast implantation. The best analogy I can give you is we did some testing at the McGowan Institute for Regenerative Medicine, and it was kind of we went from a sheep study where we got reductions in interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6, which are pro-inflammatory cytokines, and they
Yeah.
were statistically significant at 6 months. And the PI on that study called me and he's like, "Oh, you're not going to believe it." And I was like, "Boyle," I said, "that means nothing to me, and I've been doing this for 20 years. It's going to mean nothing to a surgeon." He goes, "No, it's a big deal." And we took that data from our ovine study to Dr. Badalak, who's an MD, doctor of veterinary medicine, and a PhD, and the
Wow.
executive director at the McGowan Institute. And he developed a protocol to test different biomaterials. And everyone knows what a macrophage does, especially post-COVID. It responds to injury and illness, and it actually elutes interleukin 1 beta and interleukin 6. What Steve has found in his research is there's also an M that we'll call that macrophage an M1 phenotype. There's also an M2 phenotype, which you can't tell the difference under a microscope. And that's
Okay.
pro-reparative macrophage. And they actually immunomodulate from M1 to M2. And the analogy, forgive me for this analogy that I'm going to give you. If I were to stab you with a knife and pull the knife out, you're going to get an M1 pro-inflammatory response for about 4 days. After 4 days, that chronic inflammation is going to go down, and those macrophages are going to start repairing that wound in an M2 phenotype. If I
Okay.
take that same knife, stab you, and snap the blade off, you're going to get a chronic M1 inflammatory response as long as that remains in there until the immune system walls that off. And that happens with every orthopedic material. And Steve explained this to me, and we sent him Z-Fuse to test. And he called me back and he goes, "Hey, 3 weeks later," he says, "I'm going to need 2 more sets of those coupons." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I've never seen immunomodulation in a man-made material like this." So we did the same thing with breast silicone and sent it up to Steve. And Steve called me back and he goes, "You're not going to believe it." I go, "It doesn't work." He goes, "About 2 times better than it is in the Z-Fuse."
Oh,
So
wow.
that's really where we'd like to go on the next evolution into that and hernia mesh. So
Okay. No, that's so exciting because I know that rejection in any implant is up there. It's not all the time, but it's there. But if you guys can reduce that inflammatory stage, down to a fraction of what it is, that's faster recovery time for these
that's
patients, better quality of life, less expense on the healthcare field and the patient. So such exciting stuff. I'm so glad you shared that with us today. So, Derrick, as we wind down, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all your tips and just things you're doing. It's lots of exciting stuff. If people wanted to connect with you, how should they go about that?
My email is ceo@diffusion with one F tech.com.
Awesome.
And our website is also diffusiontech.com, and there's a lot of videos on there. Dr. Badalak explains much more eloquently than I did.
You did a great work.
That M1, M2 response.
No, that's very eye-opening. I mean, yes, it's a rough thing about getting stabbed, but it makes sense because any foreign body you stick in there, your immune system's like, this isn't supposed to be here.
Yep.
Even though it's making things better, your body just says, foreign body, we need to get it out, or we need to protect everything else.
Protect it. Yep. Absolutely.
Wall it off, like you said. Awesome.
Yep.
Thanks everyone for joining today. We really appreciate it. And Derrick, thank you so much for joining.
Appreciate it, Nick. Have a great day. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Flex Forward podcast. If you've got grit, growth, and a great story, visit flexforwardpodcast.com/guest to apply and join us on the show.